Hey, what's up? This is Jared Aguilar, student physical therapist, co-host of the Duck Legs podcast that you're listening to, and thank you for that. There's many other podcasts that you could be and should be listening to now instead of this one, and we appreciate your bad choice. But on this episode, we had the pleasure, the privilege to interview Dr. Dan Pope, who doesn't like being called a doctor, but that's okay. This is my show. I can call him whatever I want to. But Dan Pope is an awesome individual. You don't know who Dan Pope is? You haven't been to fitnesspainfree.com before? Well, you're dropping the ball there, because fitnesspainfree.com is a monster of a website. It has 7 years of Dan Pope's knowledge as a physical therapist, CrossFit coach and competitor, amateur gymnast, and self-proclaimed meathead. Those are the words right from his site. I am not insulting the dude. But Dan Pope is a beast. You can check out Fitness Pain Free, like I said, and look at his 500-pound deadlifts times 5, his snatches, his Hudson Valley 2009 showdown, all this cool, great information, along, of course, with a bunch of information on how to stay fit pain-free and just learn a bunch of great physical therapy / CrossFit / rehab information that he has on his site. And I mean, stop listening to me and go check out Fitness Pain Free already. But back to the podcast, back to the interview that we have with Dr. Dan Pope. He's a physical therapist over in Boston at Champion PT. That's Mike Reynolds' place with Lenny Macarena, and Dave Tilley. In part 1 of this interview, we talked to him about Fitness Pain Free, of course. We also talked about building your online business, how he scaled his knowledge that he learned in school. We talked about being a strength coach plus a physio, because he was a strength coach first before he even applied to physical therapy school. We talked about strongman, more about CrossFit, powerlifting, gymnastics. We talk about the early on beef that some physical therapists had with CrossFit, and how if you're a CrossFit physio, how to deal with some of the hate that gets thrown at you. And we learned a lot from Dan. We learned a lot about how to organize your knowledge and make your knowledge scalable via an online business. This is actually one of the first podcasts that we ever recorded, Tyler and I, before we even had Daimir in the group. And this was, I think, the third one that we ever tried, and we were using Zoom. Not Zoom. We were using Skype. We use Zoom now. We were using Skype to record our podcast so far, and we did one with Greg Todd, and then Charlie Weingroff, and this was Dan Pope, and we were betting on Skype to work really well for us. But then all of a sudden, we had some technological issues, and the sound wasn't coming up. We couldn't sync up to actually send Dan Pope the invite, and we could never really get face-to-face on Skype. And then by the time like 25 minutes passed already before our set time at 8 a.m. in the morning or whatever, we could only see his face, and the audio was never coming through. So we only got to see like Dan Pope laughing at us for the first 10 minutes, and it was really upsetting. He was laughing. Dan Pope was having a good, grand old time, but I was freaking out, and Tyler was just looking at me like, oh boy. But so that wasn't the best way to start off our third ever podcast recording with the great Dan Pope. But luckily enough, Dan Pope is also a veteran podcaster who could greatly appreciate the struggles and the shit hitting the fan of technology and how to set up a podcast. So he was cool with it. It only delayed us like 30 minutes, and then we got right into it, and we had to leave Skype and use Google Hangouts. And if you know anything about Google Hangouts, you can't record from there. So the audio that you're going to hear from the interview is actually me holding a phone, my iPhone recorder, picking up my voice and Tyler's voice and Dan Pope's audio from GChat, Google Hangouts. So enjoy that, and know that as soon as you start hearing the interview, that's you're listening to a very scared and upset and distraught Jared that he had to waste like 30 minutes of Dan Pope's time. And I'm trying to pull it together very early on in one of our early podcast recordings. So with that little bit of background, hope you enjoy. And this is part 1. Peace.
It's kind of one of those things. It's like the duck. You know, you see a duck in the water, right? The duck looks like it's cool, but the duck's freaking working hard under the water. Wow, working hard. That's how our place is. We look cool, but we're working hard.
Champion, that's a cash-based facility? Is that right?
Yeah, so it's out of network. So basically, when people come in, we give them a sheet, and I'm going through this still, so I don't know the ins and outs of it fully. But it's not necessarily just straight cash, it's out of network. So if people have out of network benefits for their insurance, we give them a sheet, we show them how they can call their own insurance company and see what their out of network benefits are. And they what we end up doing is we will treat them and give them receipt, and they end up submitting that to the insurance company for reimbursement. So it's kind of backwards compared to most places, most in-network outpatient facilities, where you go in and give insurance information and copay, and then the company figures it out. It's kind of the opposite. We do the therapy, we give them receipt, they go through the process of trying to get reimbursed.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very. I haven't heard that one yet. I haven't heard that approach.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, depending on the insurance company you have, they don't get reimbursement, so it has to be just a cash rate, or people will have just a little paying, and then maybe their out-of-network benefits kick in. I actually don't know enough about this. It's been my fourth day, so I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, because Tyler was bringing this up to me earlier. He's wanted to ask you about the future of PT and the role of insurance, and right whether more clinics will tend to look like yours over at Champions.
Yeah, it was a question pretty much. Are we thinking that the model is going to change from a traditional in-network insurance base to an out-of-network kind of cash base? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's really interesting. I guess one of the tricky things, and the last student I worked with is an awesome student, but one of the things that's happening right now is people are coming out with these enormous student loans.
Yes.
And depending on where you are, it's really hard, especially if you want to work an outpatient, to make enough money to make ends meet, right? So a lot of times I think we're being forced into more of a cash-based model, which I think is good if you can make it work. It's very challenging. We have to see more and more patients depending on the company you work in. Sometimes it feels like the quality of care goes down. You don't get to establish the same rapport that you do with patients. I think sometimes therapists get overloaded. They have a hard time making an emotional connection with people because they're doing it all day long, and it's tough. So I think this is a nice alternative experience with it, similar to personal training, like I did previously. Not in the sense that what I do on a regular basis, but the business side of things, and having to be on top of just running your business and making sure that you're getting people through the door.
Yeah.
And you worked as a strength.
I'll tell you in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And
I worked as a strength conditioning coach. I did a lot of I was kind of learning crazy in my undergrad. I did a lot of internships, and after I finished up with my undergraduate career at Rutgers, I worked for a few years as a strength conditioning coach. I also did personal training at that time. So I liked that model, and kind of the sad part about it is that before I had left and gone to physical therapy school, I was making more money at the time than I did with my entry-level position at a physical therapy school after, $150,000 in debt. So I made the decision because I wanted to be a better therapist. I want to see lots and lots of patients and develop my craft. But it is something you face. And going back to the student that I was talking about earlier, he started his own cash-based thing right out of PT school, in addition to working full-time in a more insurance-based model. He's actually at a hybrid model, I think. But,
awesome.
I think a lot of people are just being forced into this situation because they want to, because the system, I think, is very challenging, and also because they need to from a financial perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely understand that struggle.
What are you guys thinking? Are you going to do outpatient right afterwards, or are you thinking about doing some home health or anything like that?
Yeah, we hear home health is where the money's at, but also, I mean, I'll speak for myself, and then I'll let Tyler chip in. I'm hearing, those select few that are opening up, whether it's a side hustle or part time, cash based clinic in like a CrossFit facility or something, and then also working 40 hours at an orthopedic clinic. And I think something like that is sounding pretty appealing to me right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. For me, I just think that I'm probably going to end up going if all the little ins and outs work out with. Don't want to talk too much about like return on investment and everything, but if all that kind of stuff works out with establishing your own thing with cash base, and I know that that's probably the route I'll be going with, setting up clients and everything.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool model. I mean, the other thing, I've heard of some hybrids too, where because different insurance companies are going to reimburse different rates, and I think a lot of times you're fighting for different contracts from insurance companies. Some you can accept, some maybe not. Some are maybe too much a pain in the butt, don't pay enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some people that are doing a combination of cash-based as well as insurance, in-network and out-of-network, depending on if the pay is good enough, and they're getting by that way.
Yeah.
And we've been told by Greg Todd that, really the place to go is a lot of online stuff. What is your thought? I know you have that with your deal. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's been really cool. I think one of the neatest things about being online is that you share your information with so many people. I think it's absolutely ridiculous how many people read my website sometimes. Like, this is amazing that you get to reach out and help so many, which is really, really cool. The other part about that is that it's much more scalable than physical therapy practice. Let's say you have 10 people per day and it's all 1 hour. That's 10 hours of your life. There's a good chance that one or two of those people are going to cancel. And if you want to continue making your money, what are you going to do? Keep on bringing up your rate up?
Yeah,
you can do that, but you're going to start losing people because people aren't going to just pay $1 million for your services. And the other thing is that if you're online, you can sell to an infinite number of people. And if you have, say, a subscription-based product, or you have some type of digital product that's infinitely scalable. Every time I sell something online, I don't have to do any work. And your product is still just as good. It's not like you're duping people. So yeah, I think it's a great way to supplement your income.
Yeah.
It's been one of the ways I'm able to make this transition right now, because I'm not making any money at this point because I'm not seeing anyone. But I do have some online income that's been helpful, and I've saved some money. So I'm able to make a transition like this, and it's one of the ways that I can probably propel a business like this in the beginning. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome to kind of understand there.
And what was your motivation? And what was your motivation for starting FitnessPainFree.com?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I always, when I was doing strength and conditioning, I always looked up to people that were writing online, had their own blogs. I was a big time self-learner, and just really thought it was neat that people could do this and kind of share this information, and motivated me to start trying to do this myself. I think the initial people I used to really look up to were guys like John Berardi, Dave Tate, a lot of people from Testosterone Nation, I guess. Yeah. T-Nation. Used to be Testosterone, T-Mag, is like a million different names. Yeah. Guys like Paul Check, Charles Poliquin was real big for a while for me. And those are my early influences, but all those guys were entrepreneurs, Wow. And they did talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial side of things, and I just really thought it was interesting. And I think the first thing that made me, or I guess the first jumpstart for me, the big influence was a podcast called I Love Marketing. Have you guys heard of these guys before?
I've vaguely heard of that title before.
Dean Jackson and Joe Polish, and I just really liked the idea of marketing and being able to influence a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they were just given all the tools for it. And he was like, you know what, I need to start doing this. I need to start writing online. And at the time, I had already been doing a little bit of it, but it was mostly my own training with Strongman. Write a little bit of stuff here and there, but that really got me into the mindset of creating a website, trying to help people as much as I can, and eventually turn that into a business. Just because I really enjoyed it, So that it's been a passion of mine, because I love physical therapy, but I also really like marketing and the idea of being an entrepreneur, making money in ways a little different than the status quo.
Hell yeah, and man, FitnessPainFree.com. It's a great place to go for me as somebody that's trying to embark into CrossFit, more challenging fitness journeys, and then also as a PT student, you know, I find myself wanting to spend more time on that website
Yeah.
as opposed to reading, you know, our PT school books and stuff, because it gets a little monotonous and tedious in school when I can just go, you know, on Dan's website and get some direct, a little more lively and real world information.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's good to hear that it's helping some people.
Oh yeah,
Good.
especially that plyometrics article. I hear that's a really good article on that website.
Yeah, it was good. Very mind opening. It was a good one.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, by the way. That was really nice of you to write that. So
Thank you.
it's good. A lot of people liked it.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, for those that don't know, I did write an article
Oh.
for Fitness Pain Free.
That is a shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
That's
But-
good. I think it's something that's it's been growing a lot in the past couple of years, but just physical therapists trying to network and market and get themselves out there a little bit more.
Yes.
Versus physical therapists are, and maybe this is just an older generation in general, but they're not online. They don't really know what's happening in the blogosphere, Twittersphere. They're missing big things. I think physical therapy as a profession is changing very quickly.
Yes.
And if you're not on the edge of it, you're missing big pieces. So,
And just like Tyler and you said, like the whole marketing side is changing so much now, getting so much quicker. You know, if you listen to people like Gary Vaynerchuk, they talk about we're becoming the mobile first or the mobile only society, and just thinking about ways how physical therapy can benefit from being a mobile first society, and how we can share our information. You know, all the work we put in getting 100K in debt, and how we can capitalize on, you know, sending out education through our cellular devices.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. We want to be able to educate people. We also want to be able to make a living too. So I think it's excellent for us to be able to, you know, potentially create a website, potentially create these products we can actually help people from a distance. I mean, it's tough because there's definitely an allure to being a manual therapist and putting your hands on someone. I think there's definitely some benefit to that. But I mean, there's a ton of research to show that home exercise programs work. I think shoulder impingement syndrome is a really good case to show that home exercise program in the long term is as good as manual therapy, depending on the research site you look at. So you're going to be able to help a lot of people with just prescribing exercises and being a coach to that person, maybe from a distance, or maybe even just through education in a book, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's what's currently happening, and that's definitely what I'm trying to do. I mean, it's a big thing.
And you're doing it well, sir. Excellent.
Thanks, man. Working on it.
And Dan, feel free to hang up with us at any time you need to go. Sorry again for the
Oh no, it's okay.
lateness.
Don't worry about it. It's like I said, it's now recording these is a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
This was the original question I wanted to open with before we got all technical difficulty. Dan, how is it possible to be a successful strongman athlete / CrossFit competitor / gymnast and self-proclaimed meathead all at the same time? That's part one. And part two is there any style of training that you have not done yet?
Yeah. So the first part I'd say no. Reason being is that there's just so many moving parts. So if you want to do any part of that well, you're probably going to have to choose one, you know? What I will say is that when I was at my absolute best for strongman, I did strongman full time. CrossFit, a lot of my lifts went down, my conditioning went up. And when you introduce something like gymnastics, and this is something I'm kind of dealing with right now. So let's say currently I'm trying to get stronger again, so I'm doing a lot of powerlifting stuff. Once you start introducing more gymnastics work in, it takes away a little bit from what you can do from a powerlifting perspective. So I've got this really weird split right now where I'm doing like a little bit of Olympic lifting, I'm doing powerlifting stuff, I'm throwing in like accessory movements from gymnastics, and you know, it looks really weird. But I guess the second part is that I have exercise ADD.
Oh,
Trying pretty much everything. I have a hard time doing anything for a period of time, so I switch it up a lot.
do you want to get that checked out at all?
Yeah. I'm actively treating it.
Okay,
A
good.
lot of drugs.
That's good to hear. Maybe you can
Right.
find a support group.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on yoga?
It's funny. I mean, I actually use a lot of yoga stuff, but it's not directly from yogis, I guess. I don't have like a yoga mentor. Like I look up to a lot of people in a lot of realms. So there's a lot of strength and conditioning coaches I really like, a lot of physical therapists I really like, a lot of marketing people I really like, and just good people in general that I like to look up to. But when it comes to yoga, I really don't have many influences, but just the people that I like, I've kind of have this trickle down of information from different realms that have gotten to me. And then when I'm looking at my exercises and I'm watching some of the yoga stuff, it's very similar. Definitely think there's a lot of good stuff in yoga. People love it. It's a little meditative. You get a lot of stress relief. You get people moving. I think it's great, like any other type of fitness. You do get people in trouble with it a little bit because people get a little extra Gumby. They get really obsessed with some of the extreme range of motion. They get problems just like in any other fitness area or sport. And so I think as a physical therapist, I'm grateful for it because I think that they've had a good influence on my life and the way I practice. From a physical therapy perspective, I definitely do treat yogis that overstretch and maybe strain their hamstring or something like that, or have some hip impingement or something like that from trying to do too much stretching. For sure, some instability problems, and, lack of strength and control. But yeah, I'm not against it in any way, and I think it's a great way for people to get moving.
Awesome.
Anything that gets people more fit, healthy, I think is a good thing. So,
and I think that's the most basic point, right? The most important point. And to kind of lead off that, here's a question from Stephanie Ojanowski, who couldn't be here today. She's been a CrossFit OG for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask if Dan has some challenges with this too and how he kind of combats this. But she's dealt with a lot of people, a lot of trolls online, and then also people in her own profession that have shitted on CrossFit, especially with her being a physical therapy student and a CrossFit competitor and coach. And we had one day in class when we had a professor and a student who just ripped CrossFit to shreds.
Yeah. And it almost attacked her personally for believing in CrossFit.
Right. How have you dealt with those challenges and criticisms?
Yeah, for sure. I think if you get really into the CrossFit realm, you get people that just because you're a little bit of an extremist in one regard, because you like CrossFit so much, people are going to be naturally against you. I think fitness in general, there's a little bit of a stigma to it. It's like, oh man, you like to eat well, oh, you're not eating bread, oh, you can't do this because you have to work out. Oh, you're waking up early to do this. I think that's kind of been a bit of a stigma in fitness in general. And then CrossFit's an example where it's so popular that you see more of it. But yeah, you see a lot of backlash from the CrossFit, from the physical therapy realm. It's almost like a running joke. I think I wrote about this one point in an article. I think it was probably my most popular article to date. There's something about what physical therapists need to know about CrossFit athletes or something like that. But there's a guy speaking at, I think it was CSM several years ago. His name was Joe Black, and he was talking about knee pain. He was talking about how the foot influences the knee. And he said that once he gets his patients better, he sends them to the local CrossFit gym, And you would thought like this guy had just shot someone right on the stage, a lot of gasping. I thought that was really cool. I think the truth of the matter is that if you fully understand the sport and you fully understand the lifts and you know how to program appropriately and you're programming for the individual that's in front of you, and CrossFit's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. I think the issue comes into play when you're in a group environment, which obviously CrossFit is. You're trying to apply very complex movements, something like a clean, muscle ups, potentially giving it to someone who's not ready for that. Potentially you're dealing with someone who's a bit older that has an injury history that doesn't allow them to do things, dealing with mobility limitations, whatever that is, and they end up getting hurt because of that. Necessarily the fault of CrossFit, I wouldn't say, but maybe poor coaching, or maybe it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, as a CrossFit coach, you see a lot of knuckleheads out there where you're like, you need to modify this or take some weight off the bar or stop doing this movement. They just keep doing it. And a lot of that's their personality, and it's not the coach's fault at all. People just do dumb things, and they might come over to the physical therapist and be like, oh man, I got hurt in CrossFit. And the physical therapist does't know any better. Like, you got to stop.
Yeah.
Because what other treatment do they know? They can get you out of pain, but get you back to kippy pull-ups. They don't know how to do that. So there's an inherent lack of understanding. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had, patient come in with, let's say, knee arthritis, and the surgeon's like, hey, you better not do a squat, better not do a leg press. And like, there's a whole bunch of research out there that shows that squatting and leg press is one of the best things for knee arthritis. So it's just a lack of understanding, I think, sometimes on the physical therapist part. The other thing is that I do think there's people that probably shouldn't be involved in particular programs. It's tough, right? So if I'm a business owner and I own a CrossFit gym and I want to cater to the 20 and 30-year-olds, because that's the majority that come into the gym, I got a couple 50 or 60-year-olds that come in. They may need a completely different program, but that's not necessarily in the cards as a business owner that's trying to cater to the majority. So I can see where sometimes it's challenging, right? I mean, CrossFit kind of says they're infinitely scalable, which in a lot of ways they are, but it just takes a lot of thought, a lot of really smart modifications, and time, which I don't think you have in a group environment always.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
How have I done with it?
yeah.
Yes, I don't even think I answered the question at all.
I think that was it. I think that was perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and especially as me being a relatively new CrossFitter and somebody that still has to learn the Olympic lifts and still has to work on a whole lot of mobility issues. It's challenging too when you're in a group class and then that time limit hits and you're like, you got to get your WOD done, your 21 kettlebell swings and 8 hang pulls or whatever it is under a certain time. And then, me being a nerdy PT kid, it's like, well, I gotta do these movements clean and and correct. And it's a challenge to really kind of blend that side.
Yeah, sometimes it could be tough to swallow a modification, in a group setting.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, oh, I'm the only one that's having to do it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I tell it depends, right? So if I have a patient come in, first thing we talk about is your goals. Like, hey, are you trying to be Rich Froning Jr. or are you just trying to get fit? Why does it matter if you do kipping or not, So that's a really big conversation I have with people. The other one I tell people a lot, and this a lot of times will sink in well with people that are trying to be a little more competitive. So they're trying to do the prescription, which I think is a majority of people that really want to do well in CrossFit. They don't want to just go and get fit. One of my good buddies who's also a coach at CrossFit Verve is Paul Bono. Paul Bono went to the games. They were number 2 team for CrossFit Milford, Jason Leiden. And Paul Bono doesn't go a day without modifying his workout. Every single day something gets modified. So he never does RX, right? He's constantly changing. This is one of the best guys in the world. So it's like, man, if you want to be really good, you have to modify. You have to change things. That's how you get better, is by tweaking things in a way that's going to make you the best you can be, not by doing exactly the same as everyone else, right? That's the same with anything else. Like, you come in with shoulder pain, I'm not going to make you do the same generic program as I made, the person that came in before.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably got to be changed. It's going to look similar in a lot of ways, but there's going to be tweaks here.